Your alternative talk radio contact. The Planet. KGRAradio.com.
Bring his family. He brought the Chamber of Commerce here.
Gosh.
He used to. So we're, it's a little weird to be rooting for him, but he's such a nice guy. I'm cool with it.
Well, let's cross our fingers that he gets back in.
Same here. So happy Halloween on your side.
Yes, thank you. Is Carrie Ann Elizabeth around there?
Carrie's kind of wandering through here and there, but she's not going to be on much tonight.
Right.
She got a little bit of con crud at Spooky Empire this weekend.
Uh-oh.
And
yeah,
is
a lot
still
of bodies.
recovering.
Well, a big hello to Elizabeth then.
Hello.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Reading through you guys' book. We are here tonight to talk about Tales of Terror from Tampa Bay. And I'm sure you know by now, Elizabeth, that I have a special place in my heart for Florida. So I figured what better time to talk about Tales of Terror from Tampa Bay than around Halloween time. So you were talking about Spooky Empire. So can you guys, because Elizabeth, I know that you were there too with Mark and Carrie. So can you guys just touch on that a little bit and what the flavor of that whole event was?
So Spooky Empire is a con that we do in Florida. I believe we do it twice a year. Obviously, around this time, it's the bigger one, and then they kind of have like a mini con about what I would say maybe
April, May.
So, but it's geared towards, as the name implies, people that like horror or mystery or a little bit of sci-fi thrown in, but it's mostly a horror con. So like this year we had guests that were like What We Do in the Shadows, and different, horror stars. The It Kids were there. John Cusack was there, things like that. And we had a booth and we were selling our first 2 books. And then the forerunner was Erie, Florida, which I know you know all about. But it was just a really great con. It was totally our group of people, totally our speed, totally our book subject. So we had a lot of fun dressing up and everyone is super nice there. Sometimes people think like the horror crowd are like really weird people, and you can get some of those, but every vendor was super nice. Every, guest was, I don't think I had any negative impact from anyone there. So.
Yeah, it was awesome. This was Elizabeth's first Spooky Empire. I've been almost every one. I was on the creators track, which is where they have authors and actors and direct filmmakers and podcasters. So you should apply for next time.
Well, I didn't realize they had that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I was on a few panels. One with Al Goingback, who was my mentor 20 years ago on teaching me some of the early spooky tales of Florida. And he's now a writer for DC Comics. He's a Bram Stoker winner as a novelist. But he's changed jobs more times than I think anybody. And now he's writing for DC. He's writing a new Poison Ivy story. And so it was pretty cool because he had just gotten the art for his story. And he was showing that off on his phone because we just got it right before the con. I was there with Christopher Golden and a few other great authors. And Frank Cavallo was there, and our wonderful friend Chris Colstrom. It was her first Spooky as a guest, so she got there too.
Nice. Was she there selling books and stuff?
Yeah, she was at our table, but she also, because she was hanging out with me, they roped her into a couple of the panels and wound up being a guest.
Nice.
So she got onto the Women in Horror and a few other panels that were really good. We did a panel on reality versus versus myth. So it was like versus Hollywood. So it was like The Conjuring versus Annabelle. So as you remember in one of our video episodes, we have our little Annabelle doll, the little Raggedy Ann, and so they show a clip from the movie, and then we pulled out the little Raggedy Ann doll while the lights were down, and people gasped. When the lights came back up because suddenly there was Raggedy Ann sitting on the table.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah, Eric, he's going to come. I can't remember his last name, but who hosted it. Yeah, we kind of planned that, and it worked out really well. So,
did you guys? Was there anyone that you geeked out over? You're like, oh my God, there's so and so, and I didn't know they would be here.
Riku Browning, the original Creature from the Black Lagoon, was there. and that was me geeking out. John Kassir, the Crypt Keeper, was super nice. Lonnie Anderson, that was like old school
wow.
for me, but was freaking awesome. Richard Dreyfuss was there. Joey Pantoliano, and
Bulk.
Perusa Balk was there.
Yeah, and I loved her from Return to Oz. Like, I remember seeing that come on the TV when I was really little, and it was one of those movies where, you know, my parents were like, oh, let's wait till you're older to watch this.
Yeah.
So, like, that movie had always stuck out in my mind, and then when I didn't even know she was going to be there. Mark's like, she's here, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So that was my one.
Yeah, I know the one I mostly geeked out over was John Kassir. He and I were just chatting away, doing old, you know, as both old voiceover people. It was kind of funny finding out that we'd worked on a couple projects together and never actually met each other.
Really?
So yeah, that was kind of fun. Riku Browning, the original creature from the Black Lagoon, I got to talk to him, and he's got some spooky tales of some things that he's seen as a former Wiki Watchy diver and swimming around in the
No way, a Wiki Watchy?
Yeah, so we're going to be interviewing him for our next book. So
see, you never know. When you go to those things, it's just like walking into a possible gold mine, right? With little stories and tidbits.
Yep. And Al Going Back, who I've known for years and has turned me on to these original legends and stuff of Florida, he found a few more that I hadn't heard. So he and I are going to be talking again to throw some more stuff into the next book.
Edition 2, Erie, Florida. Cannot wait.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to be the title. That's just me throwing that out there.
The working title is Strange Florida, but we'll
that's
know
right,
for
Strange
soon
Florida.
History.
Right.
Yeah, we'll know soon when History Press decides on it. So we're still in the settling stage on what we're going to write about and all that. So
yeah, they have to sign off on every little tiny detail, right?
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Now, before we go into that, though, let's talk some old school stories that we did for our haunted house.
Yes.
So I give the intro?
Please do.
Okay. Well, on this Halloween night, very fittingly, for those of you who don't know, we ran a charity haunted house here for 20 years in my backyard called Hellview Cemetery. And we raised a lot of money for children's charities, usually Child's Play or the Florida Bat Conservancy. We did for a while there. The Kind Mouse, which is a local charity that feeds transitional families. We tried to make money for anybody who really wanted us to. And anyway, as we did all this, it got bigger and bigger. But we based all the stories on local legends and lore, things that people would email us and say, "Oh, do you know about this ghost story?" or "Do you know about this story?" or something I would stumble on, and all that. And that actually was the predecessor to Erie, Florida. It was all these little stories I collected. And then I used to publish them on our website as quick little vignettes and little things like that. We used to do it on a live journal called the Caretaker's Journal. And that's where most of these stories were originally published. And it's kind of funny because some of them took on a life of their own. They'd been cut and pasted basically to Reddit's No Sleep and creepypasta websites in the early days, and I didn't even know this. And it was funny because as we were compiling the book some years ago, people were like, "Oh, that was on No Sleep a few years ago." We're like, "What?"
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of where some of these stories may seem familiar to some because they were just basically from that old website. Now, what had happened was I had stopped writing for the most part, except for video, board game journalism and a few other things. I wrote for Knights of the Dinner Table. I wrote a few role-playing game supplement stuff, and I hadn't written really in years. And then I met the lovely and talented Elizabeth Abbott one day out of the blue and got me back on my writing horse. So, and that's, we co-authored this together, and we pieced together stories from Hellview Cemetery's website with some new twists and turns. And thus 31 Tales of Hellview was born. And then a year later, we reissued it as Tales of Terror Tampa Bay. We took out the stuff that we had just made up for Hellview, things that were just completely off the top of my head, and redid a few more stories, added more stories, and made the little bit bulkier Tales of Terror, which is just stories that were based on local legends and lore.
Now, before we jump into the few that I chose that I thought were my favorites and really were very amazingly, wonderfully creepy. Elizabeth, I mean, what got you into, being into the strange and unusual? Have you had an experience of your own, or are you just kind of into this sort of thing?
So when I met Mark, I think I was actually still in college, or I was finishing up. I have a degree from Full Sail, so editing, writing, stuff like that. So when I met him and he mentioned this to me, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I'm a spiritual person. Like, I believe in religion and stuff like that, but I've always felt like I have a little bit of a connection to it. Like, I can understand people's emotions a lot easier than other people can. So when he was telling me, obviously we started talking, I told him about, what I wanted to do for my livelihood. And he was like, oh, I do that too, and everything like that. He showed me actually one of the stories that he had written, and it just really piqued my interest. I love Hitchcock. I love classic Hitchcock, suspense, psycho, all that kind of stuff. I'm personally not into the really gory stuff because I believe the older classics are much more, intense and well written. Mm-hmm. But really, honestly, I never even considered getting into this genre until I read the works that Mark did. So at first I thought they were all made up. And he's like, no. This story is from like a live account. And I was like, that's a really interesting, thing that you've done with it. He's like, do you have time to edit? I don't have time to edit. And I was like, I do. So we kind of just collaborated, and then we did the second one, and now I'm totally into it.
She's working on a project of her own for potentially for History Press.
So nice. Congrats.
In the early stages now. So, but going to kind of carpool along with Carrie and I as we investigate the next book. Because some similar subject matter and going to be in the same areas in some places.
Nice. Big congrats on that, Elizabeth. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, guys, if you don't mind, can we touch on the story called The Neighbor from Tales of Terror? I'm
a huge Tales from the Crypt fan, as anybody who has listened to any of our previous appearances kind of knows. That's where Hillview, the missing cemetery, turned into Hellview. Things like that. And we used to actually call what we were doing for these stories is we were hell viewing them up. We were taking these original accounts and making them a little spooky. Now, this one is actually a personal account. I had basically a stalker for a little while and didn't even realize it. It was a friend of a friend who found me on Facebook and started messaging me, and I was happy to find this old friend. I had no idea they were slightly disturbed. And, and at one point, this person showed up at my work and was like, oh, okay. And I was like, all right, well, you found out where I work from my Facebook profile, and now you're stopping by. I worked at a pretty public retail job. Yeah, I worked at a retail job, so I didn't think anything of it. It was just, oh, okay, well, maybe you're into, video games. I worked at that time for a company that shall remain nameless, but rhymes with Shame Stop. And, anyway, so, maybe they're into games. So I don't know. This is interesting. Just showed up in my life again after 20 years. And then suddenly it got a little creepy and a little weird and, and then this person wanted to help out at Hellview one year, and I was like, okay, because we always needed every volunteer we could get. And then this person found out, how to get in if you're a Hellview volunteer. So one day I just started having my epilepsy attacks that we didn't know what they were at the time. So I wasn't being medicated, wasn't being treated. And I would just black out and, and not know what's going on. And I would just have to lay down. It was just terrible. And I was actually off work for a little bit. And because I hadn't been at work for a little while, this person was concerned about me to the point where they came over while I was having a seizure one time and laying down trying to recover, and walked into my house with me and my daughters with no one knowing, and nowhere near Halloween, nowhere near anything, and waking up, out of a stupor, basically out of a post-seizure stupor, and that sense of dread and that feeling that there's someone in the room with you, sitting on your bed, rubbing your head. Oh my God, creepy. And then they were slightly schizophrenic, so they were very religious, and they were talking about, and they were talking all these random things and quoting the Bible, and then they were grabbing their Bible and writing all these weird notes and showing me these weird notes. And so, of course, all that blurred together to make this wonderful story, The Neighbor, which is also slightly enhanced by the fact that there was a creepy neighbor across the way that eventually wound up killing Hellview a little bit. So we tied the two stories together to make this one. So let me read you a quick.
Oh, I was just going to ask. I remember one of the parts in this chapter. It said that she would talk to herself in tongues. Did she actually do that part of it? Oh my gosh.
Yes, actually, she would come into the when I started working at the bookstore later. I was helping out at the bookstore. She found that out, came over to the bookstore, and when she would buy a new Bible, because she would inevitably lose that one that she'd scribbled in so much somewhere. And she had, she was working and, doing well, this is why schizophrenia is a scary thing. She would buy another Bible and then bring that over, and then she would be talking in tongues, basically. And I knew she hadn't taken any language classes, had pretty much flunked out of high school. And I'm like, what? And it was very unusual stuff. And all that worked into the story. So, okay. So here's one of the bits. The next night I woke up in the middle of the night and saw a shadow of a person next to the bed looking at me sleeping. I'm hallucinating, I spoke to myself. When the shadow moved, I noticed that it was my neighbor. You should lock your door at night, she said, and then walked out. The next morning, I heard someone making strange noises below my window. I looked to see the old woman talking to herself in tongues. She had a plastic bag in her hand with something rotting inside, and I could smell death from the bag. At this point, I was scared. She was obviously insane. I called the police, and they knew all about her. They can't enter her apartment without her permission because she owns it, and the only thing they can get her on is when she goes outside. I sat up for the next 2 days waiting for her to run out of cigarettes. Finally, I noticed her slowly exiting her apartment, and I headed over to the corner store. I immediately called the police, and they sent a squad car with 2 police officers out for her arrest. I sit watching the parking lot as they stop her on the way back, handcuff her, and place her in the back of the car. I walk outside as they approach her apartment and enter due to the door not being completely closed. However, the appearance has changed. It was empty. None of the writing on the walls. Only a faint smell of death and decay remained. And I'm not going to go any further than that.
Not the kind of neighbor that you want to have.
No. Yeah, to be fair, this was 2 separate people that I combined into one story because they were just so similar. So, and it was just, it's scary stuff. And, we bump into the stalker every once in a while as we wander through St. Petersburg. It's a big town, 2 million people, but every once in a while it's a small town too.
Right.
And it's like, oh gosh, there she is. And
does she act like nothing happens or nothing happened prior?
No, she's gotten worse. So now she just sits and reads her Bible and just mumbles to herself. You say hi, and that's about all you're gonna get.
Oh wow, that is quite sad. I mean, scary and very sad.
Yeah, exactly. And mental health, mental illness is not a fun thing. So where are we jumping next?
Let's go to nursing home.
Okay. This is based on a tale told at the Bon Secours Maria Manor, which is this beautiful nursing home. And it was where my mother was staying when she had her dementia shortly before she passed. She was there for several years. And because I was hanging around there so much, the nurses would all talk to me. And they go, "Oh, you run a haunted house?" And I go, "Yeah." And then they go, "Oh, we've got ghost stories." And I'd be like, "Oh, do tell." And there were tons of ghost stories about the place. There was ghostly nun that was seen on the second floor in one of the chapels, and there was some other stuff. But one story stuck out with me really well, and this is the one. And honestly, this one, I got chills from the two nurses that told me this story. And it's one of those that when you hear it, it sticks with you. And it's just, and apparently they were saying that every other nurse and every other doctor that they know that deals with this sort of thing has stories very similar to this. And it was a ghost story basically, but it's a hard one to describe. So I will skip into a little bit. I'll give you a quick summary of this one. There were two nurses working, taking care of a patient. Instead of reading from this one, I think this will be better. They were taking care of one patient who in the Alzheimer's wing, and this woman was just terrible, one of the worst one. So they would always save her for last when turning them all down for bed. And they would come in and have to clean her room really badly because she was just terrible. And this was in the wing right below my mother. And they used to call it the C wing, for the really ones that were really far gone. And so anyway, they'd save this woman for last because she'd have smeared stuff all over the walls, bio refuse we'll try to keep it clean. Yeah. And would write her name in it, and just, it was just a terrible person. Well, one night they went in and she was just being manic and screaming at them, didn't want to go to bed, had just made this terrible mess. And they, this one other nurse teams up with them, and they, so they're all putting her back to bed. And she is telling them that when her father gets back, he's gonna take her home and save her from all this, and that they're torturing her and feeding her poison and, the usual stuff. And they're like, yeah, well, if your dad's coming, you better get cleaned up. You better let us help you get clean. You better get into bed and get ready. So that actually calmed her down and got her to lay down in bed and all that. Well, they walk out of the room, and not a minute passes, and this large Farmer John looking guy who's like 6 foot huge comes storming down the halls wearing overalls and a big beard, and storms right past him. And it's like way after visiting hours, and goes into the room right behind him with the lady. And they're like, what the heck? And they turn around and they rush back in the room just to say, look, you can't be in here. And he's gone. And she's just sitting in the bed. And they're like, what's going on? Where is he? And she's like, oh, Daddy came and he's going to take me home. And they search the room, they search the bathroom, they search everything. And then there's nothing. He's gone. This huge guy just disappeared. So they lay her back down. They go out of the room, and they're both just shaken. What did they just see? And of course, because the way these stories go, that night she passed away.
I really like that one. That one did give me the chills, because I've heard similar stories like that, and you hear that at especially a lot of the hospice care places when people are very close to death, and they will see people that they are very close to prior to them passing.
Yeah, my mother swore her father came to visit her.
Really?
And
they ask around too, like they ask, like, and it says in the story, like they ask a security guard, even look at the security tapes, and there's actually like a blur of red that's on the security tapes, and someone else claims, like, yeah, I saw this big guy just barging in, you know what I mean? So it's that one, definitely, when I was helping edit that one stood out in my mind too, because I feel like that's totally possible.
Yeah, and it was so funny because, like they said, they've seen so many people, would say, "Oh, I'm waiting for my, my grandfather. I'm waiting for my son. I'm waiting for my daughter." And they should have died 3 days ago. And then suddenly, a person shows up, and then they pass, because that person made it, it's the will to live is an unusual thing.
Yeah. And I just wonder, I really do think that a lot of times when you're kind of in between this world and, the next, and the veil is thinner, I think maybe you are seeing those folks before you pass, and maybe you are able to converse with them and they're actually conversing with you. That's a kind of a comforting thought. People that you love before you die, they come and see you. Yeah.
I mean, it certainly, changed my outlook on a lot of things.
Yeah.
Those nurses, man, they were like, we didn't believe until then, and they're like, but every nurse, has a story if they've been doing it long enough, in the right place.
Now that video that you guys were talking about, that was a true part of the story, that there was this recording of this red blur.
They said that when they talked to security, they saw something.
Wow.
And the security guy, was no longer with the manor, so I couldn't find out if that was 100% true.
Right.
But the nurses swore that when they had talked to the guy, that he had seen him, and then when he went back to look at the footage, it was just weird and some sort of blur. So, and that's where that came from. So, yeah.
Well, that ties
interesting stuff. So,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Love that.
So we worked him into the haunted house. We had a big Farmer John guy every year with a beard, and he would come looking for his daughter. Yep. That's what we do. We'd work all this into the haunted house some way or another.
That's cool. Now, this one is not a one that you want to really think about too hard before, you go to sleep or you're home alone or something and seeing something like this. But it crawls, and this is based on a tale told at Emerald Point Apartments. Yeah,
this is right down the street from my house. Emerald
nice.
Point. It's kind of a nice entry-level apartment building for young folk, also for people who can't quite afford a nicer apartment. This is kind of like the scaled back, a little bit cheaper, a little bit more run-down apartment buildings on 4th Street. They're nice, though. They're passable. It's definitely not the worst. Usually people live there in groups, to share rent and all that. They're usually nice little 2-3 bedroom apartments. Usually have 4 or 5 people staying in them. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
I had some friends who lived there that worked on the haunt, and they started hearing the stories almost immediately about moving there, about the thing that lived there and that they would see. And then they immediately, as Hellview people, were like, "Oh my gosh, we've got to find this. We've got to see this." So they're watching for it. And then sure enough, one of them had an experience with it. And so that was one of the creatures. Immediately, I'm like, oh my gosh, the description was just so insane that I had to we had to work it into Hellview. And then the story came from it. One of those late nights I woke up thinking about this creature going, oh my God, I got to write this down now.
Yes.
So, yeah. And this was probably one of the first ones that actually made me want to compile it all and get it going, because this was definitely one of the ones that was such a weird story. And this is kind of a predecessor to Erie, Florida, because this is one I had witnesses, I had interviews, I had, collection of tales that I was going to be using. So as I searched to locate what it was that had my dog so worked up, I spotted a man crawling slowly across the courtyard of my apartment complex on all fours. At first I found this funny. A drunk student was struggling to make his way to his bed and had reached a level of intoxicated that I had not viewed as humanly possible. I found myself rooting for the guy as he made his way on his hands and knees across the walkway. And that was when I realized that this man wasn't entirely normal. His arms and legs were slightly too long after the elbows and knees, much more like a spider's. The way he moved began to become more slow and irregular as he made his way across the basketball court that my balcony overlooks. It was like he, or was it, was searching for something. I don't know what, but something. He was dressed like a normal person, shorts and a bright orange sweatshirt. But something about this person, or was it thing, was just off to me. After some time of me staring, the man's neck crookedly looked in my direction. I keep my balcony dark and sit in a shadowy corner where I can watch in peace. My dog sits directly under my chair. No human, especially one this effed up, would have noticed us. This thing saw us. I know it did. It had to, because it looked directly at us and stared motionally for what felt like hours. And then it smiled. I'm going to leave that there.
Yes. The episode that I just recorded last night and then aired tonight, we talked about entities called grinners. So, when they mentioned that last night, I knew I was going to be talking to you guys about this story, and I thought of this story straight away. I'm like, this creepy thing walking around like a spider, and then it decides to grin at this poor guy who thinks that he cannot be seen, but he is. I love this story. What in the world is that?
Yeah, I mean, and that's just it. The way they describe it, the things they say, it's so creepy. And and it's like every person told me that exact same thing. It smiled at them. It's like, oh my God, that is the creepiest thing.
And Mark, were all of the witnesses from the Emerald Point apartments, or was it other areas around there?
Nope, all pretty much that apartment complex, or people visiting friends at that apartment complex. And every one of them, it was some late night after a party or after anything. So sadly, almost every person I talked to admitted, oh yeah, I'd been drinking. Oh, we'd done this, we'd done that. So I have yet to find a sober witness. But every one of them swore they sobered up the minute they saw this frickin' thing.
How many witnesses were there, or at least that you've talked to so far?
And that I've talked to, at least 6, which is a half dozen.
That was within
a 3-year period. So that's not, it was definitely something. I would love to get an investigative team or something like that to look into it. But it's definitely something. No one's been hurt by it, although there's scratching at doors, there's creepy stuff.
Yeah.
There's, everybody hears noises, everybody hears things. It's an apartment complex. Of course you're going to hear noises. Of course you're going to hear weird things. But, it's definitely something from the dark side and definitely something going on there that no one can explain.
And what was the most recent report?
Well, this was mostly around 2006 when the people who was working on Hellview with us actually living there. But we had a friend move there recently, 2000 and I want to say 15 or 16, so just a few years ago, and was barely there 6 months, and said, sure enough, one night, late night, they thought it was a dog. Then they said, no, it's a guy. And then they realized it had really long legs. Maybe it's a giant. And they were like, oh my God, it's a giant spider. And then they went, no, it's the thing. It's the thing. It's Mark's creepy thing. And they called me and they're like, it's here, it's here, it's here. I'm like, it's like 2 a.m. I'm like, what?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. They're like, come on, you got to come out. I'm like, get pictures. And they're like, oh yeah.
I know, you're like, pictures, sure enough, or it didn't happen. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, and of course they couldn't get anything. By the time they got around back to it, it was gone. So I was like, oh.
It's tough though, pictures in the dark. We've talked about that, how difficult that can be to execute, almost damn near impossible, really. Yeah. Oh, that
try
is...
to take a picture. Try to take a picture of your nightstand in the morning when you wake up before you turn the lights on.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially when you yourself are tired, let alone just the aesthetics of the room and the darkness of the room. So, well, that's interesting to hear about the newer, more recent encounter.
I love that they still follow the same basic pattern and story. So that's a place I'd love to see our local spirits of St. Pete Paranormal Investigation Team. I'd love to see them look into this.
I'm going to have to write them down, give them a little link in the show notes there. St. Pete Paranormal Team.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's called Spirits of St. Pete,
Spirits.
and they're led by Professor Brandy Stark, and
Okay.
she is an awesome person to talk to.
I have the note there. I will make sure to link her. Yeah, maybe she'd want to come on sometime and chat. Yeah, I don't know. She
hosts a podcast called Paranormal Pets, where she walks with her pugs and talks about animal ghosts and stuff. So yeah, she'd be fantastic for you.
She's got pugs. I've got a pug. There you go. It was meant to be.
Exactly.
Gotta love those little squishy face little punks. Yeah, I mean, you have to wonder, like, where in the world did this spidery looking, leggy man creature come from? Is it like an it creature and it comes from the depths of the sewer somewhere, or some abysmal cave that Florida is very famous and infamous for, right?
That's like one of the reasons why we couldn't put it in Erie, Florida, is I couldn't find any basis for it, any history for it, any legend that it was tied into. It was just a creepy story of a creature, and the incomparable Carrie Schultz just walked in to say hi.
Carrie, happy Halloween!
Hi, happy Halloween!
Hi.
He's been drawing up a storm. How many pictures have you drawn in for Erie, Florida books for people?
I've lost track at over 100.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
So yes, the link is still up just for probably another week or two from erieflorida.com if you want to get your picture drawn in by Carrie.
Yes, original artwork by Carrie. Yes.
Yeah, she will happily draw in it. She drew. We got the What We Do in the Shadows. Have you seen that movie?
Yes.
With the vampire. Yes, the funny vampire movie. Everyone should watch this movie. They were at the con one day in costume, in character.
They're so amazing. They're such sweet people too. They didn't break character. They were super fun.
And they came over and bought a copy of Erie, Florida.
That's
the makeup artist came over and bought a copy of Erie, Florida. He's like, "Cheers, mate! I gotta have this." It was so funny. And so Carrie drew the whole cast for him in the inside cover, and it was just adorable. So,
hey, I'm happy to know you guys. I'm happy to hear that Erie, Florida is just blowing up. I know Carrie's probably like, my hand could use a rest, but over 100 now you've drawn for people. That is fantastic to hear. So I will make sure to relink that.
I really enjoy it. Yeah, I have fun drawing.
And then she did it at the con too. She was really good about that. She does them pretty quick, but they're excellent quality. I was quite surprised. I thought it took a lot. If it was me drawing them, it would have taken me like a week.
Yeah.
Someone would buy the book and she'd say, "Hey, you want me to draw something?" And so people really, really enjoyed that too.
Yeah. So it's definitely, it sells out on Amazon every once in a while. We're about to go into, I think, our third or fourth printing. And we just came out in September, so thank you, Shannon, for helping plug us. And
anytime.
Yep, and we will hopefully, anybody wants to order it. And then if anybody wants Tales of Terror from Tampa Bay or 31 Tales of Hellview Cemetery, those are available. They're super cheap. I think they're 99 cents on Kindle, and they're like $10 on Amazon. So. Snag those or get your local bookseller to order them for you.
Yeah,
help your local bookstore out.
I had to get my hard copy. I do the Kindle, for my nighttime reading stuff to where it's not for the show. It's just I'm reading it right now, finally. But if I have to take, notes or it's for the show, I'm like, I like that hard copy because I like to highlight and then I'll take notes in my little notepads, and it's just one of those things that I do. But yes, the Kindle versions they're like under $1, guys, so definitely get after that. That's just a small taste of what was in Tales of Terror. So Elizabeth, it was so good to finally talk to you, so thank you so much for coming on. Now, what other, besides the Amazon places, do you guys want to give out? Any Facebook, Twitter, any of that kind of stuff?
You can find us at erieflorida.com. And, Erie, Florida on Twitter, of course. Hellview Cemetery is hellview.net, although it's pretty much just videos and footage of the old haunted house that will be returning. And, of course, the Hellview Facebook page is where we post usually where things related to that are happening. Hopefully back again next year. And then Elizabeth's projects, we will definitely link them through the Hellview page and through Erie, Florida when she gets a little further along in them. This is still early stages, so we can't say too much in case somebody tries to snipe it.
Yes.
So because it's a brilliant idea, and I'm just happy to be kind of part of that too. I'm just going to write on her coattails for this one, so we'll see what happens. But Carrie and I we just submitted our table of contents for Strange Florida, and we'll see what...
I need to do more new illustrations.
More new illustrations, yes.
No
and,
sleep for you, Carrie.
Yep, and there's one story that she is very excited to draw, and that's actually the one we're going to submit for our sample art. And that'll be one we will definitely come back on and talk to you about, Miss Shannon.
I can't wait.
And then I've got a call for your hotline, but I'm trying to save it for your April Fool's show. Okay. I really want you to, because it is definitely not one for the faint of heart, and then you'll laugh till you cry at the end. So
cannot wait for all of it.
All right.
And Strange Florida too. Now, one more question before you guys go. Elizabeth, do you want me to, link your Facebook? I know we're friends on there, but I don't. Sometimes people don't like, kind of that personal page linked in there. So that's up to you.
Probably not the personal one. I don't really have an author's page yet. I've been waiting to make one for the third book that I'm doing.
You got it.
Because like Mark said, so they're going to be traveling for Strange Florida, and then I'm going to be traveling with them because when they said I could go along with them, because Mark and I are best friends. So that, we became, first it was a partnership. Now we're kindred spirits. So, and I love Carrie to death too, obviously. So I'm going to pretty much be backpacking with them because a lot of it's different subject matter, but a lot of our places kind of, cross. So once I haven't submitted anything to Historical Press, but that's who I'm going to approach first. I can definitely send you a link to an author page that I do. Other than that, if you wanted something to connect to me, I am an admin on the Hellview Cemetery Facebook page. So if anyone had a specific question for me, I would be able to respond directly.
Awesome.
So you could do that and just say, hey, if you want to reach out to me for something, I have access to that.
I need to start you a little Facebook page for your
Yeah. I mean, I should. I got to figure it out. I've always been a little camera shy.
She's a professional editor, so she's
Right,
any authors out there.
I mean, I am looking at a book with your name on it, so you probably should get an author page. I'm just saying.
No, definitely. I mean, I love doing the original content, but I would be happy just editing for the rest of my life. I love the experience. So.
Well.
Yeah, but there you go. So happy Halloween,
Happy
Shannon.
Halloween, you guys. Thank you so much for taking time out on this special night to talk with me. I love you guys, so a big thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we love you too. Oh my goodness. We can't wait. Gotta get you down here, show you some spooky stuff.
Yes. And I just...
Oh, okay. I do have one story I'll tell you because I know you love Disney.
Yes.
You ready for a creepy Disney fact?
Absolutely.
This is terrible. This will make you hate everything around it, but I got to tell it to you.
Do it.
This is a Halloween bonus from Erie, Florida. Okay, I just learned this. Okay, this is from my great friend Al Going Back, Seminole shaman, Bram Stoker winning author. He was discussing with another tribal elder. They've been forever. They could not figure out where the word Kissimmee from Kissimmee, Florida, comes from. It's supposedly an Indian word. Well, there is no Indian word Kissimmee, and they couldn't figure out what tribe this came from. So you ready for this?
Uh-oh.
All right, here we go. When the pioneers first came to Florida, and it was right after the Second Seminole War, they were basically given carte blanche to wipe out any Indian tribes that they found in the area. And they basically would go in and massacre the men and rape the women. And that was just standard practice for clearing out places so that they could move in and build houses.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're moving into Central Florida, and the Indian language had no word for rape. so what this one squaw offered herself to a group of men to save her village. And she was telling them, kiss me, kiss me. And so the land of Mickey Mouse and happiness
Oh my
is
God.
about rape and torture and murder. So there you go.
Oh.
But I keep telling him Disney's in Lake Buena Vista, but it's Mark.
He's like, it's close enough. Oh my gosh.
It's right there. Same exit. Same exit.
Yeah, that's pretty damn close. Same exit. I don't know. Oh my good Lord.
Right
Yeah.
Kissing me.
So there you go. On that beautiful note, happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Love you guys. Hey, thank you so much for speaking to me on Halloween, night. That means a lot to me. I know what a big night it is for you guys. So thank you so much. Let's get Hellview back,
Thank
huh?
you.
God damn.